Welcome, everyone, to Sean's Thoughts. I'm Sean, and you're here with me on this wonderfully rainy day again. There's just so much rain since I woke up, and of course, I don't mean so much rain as in a monsoon or anything, but I mean it's a constant rain and wind all day. And actually, right now, the wind is kicking up, and I really appreciate that because I do love my rain. So, as I said, thank you for joining me today. Today, we're looking at this interesting tree that started off with one trunk, and then, due to some sort of concern, it grew out of that one trunk. It's kind of an interesting thing. I always like to showcase different interesting things that I come along with when I see them, and well, this caught my eye. So, we shall look at this for a few minutes. And of course, I'm looking at this chipmunk run across the field right now. It's lovely. I really do want to go out to the zoo. There's a zoo near us, and I would love to share my attention with all of the zoo animals now that I have better camera, that perhaps I can catch some of the zoo animals doing nothing. They're really amazing experts at just sitting down and relaxing. Cats are like that, and a lot of other animals. Of course, those animals are the ones that perhaps are being given their food. So anyway, so today I joined by all this wind and rain with the idea to talk about something. And although in this moment I did have something that I wanted to say, I don't exactly recall what it was at the moment. See, often these talks, I'm just led to sit down and do them, and I'll be in the middle of doing one thing and then I'll get an idea. And often, when I've been in solitude, when I've been sitting there possibly contemplating, I'll get these ideas and then I'll start running them through my head like a narrative and speaking it out. And then I think to myself, oh, well, I would like to go and record something all about all the things that I just said out loud to nobody. And yeah, the same information isn't or doesn't flow as easily. So I often think that perhaps I should just the experience that I'm experiencing when I do it, and perhaps listening, and maybe there's actually a message for myself. Yeah, everything I think that we sometimes lives, whether it's someone else's reaction to us or you know whatever it is, that's often there's a lesson or there's something in there that we, if we were to spend more focus on alleviating ourselves of those concerns, then perhaps a lot of this would have been a little bit easier. See, a lot of times people are in forums and chats and such kind of like asking, well, why is God or why is Source allowing everything that's happening on the world to happen as it is? And in my own personal experience, like I've mentioned before, I've looked back and I've seen different traumas and different situations that have, in the moment, definitely appeared to be painful and heartbreaking and challenging and, all those other words that I'm using specifically as opposed to the obvious negative ones, because those opportunities came up in my life as a way for me to become stronger, for us all essentially to become stronger. And so there's often, it's advantageous for us that we reframe things that have happened to us and look at them from a completely different angle. Like, perspective is something that's super important when it comes to enjoying one's life. For instance, when I first started creating videos, I came to the same park, and I came on the most opportune day. I came when there was no one here. I was worried about animals in the background making noises, or I was worried about the people playing soccer like they are right now, screaming and cheering, or even bypassers and such. And anyways, it essentially affected everything from my energy to my train of thought to even, my overall desire. And now I'm sitting here in the rain. It's windy. Birds are squawking, crows and such. They're all over looking for their worms. And it's actually amazing that I get to sit here and watch them during their feeding time, I guess. And there's a soccer game going on in the back with all that rain, and they're cheering. And soccer players are playing, and I'm still now out here recording. So even that was a change of my own perspective, seeing things or seeing the situation from one point of view, but then essentially getting up, moving over to the other side of the arena and sitting in my whole own new seat, and then seeing the whole game in another view. That's very similar to what I would say about any sort of game or sport out there. That one team, well, they want their team to win, the other team wants their team to win. You know, they draw on that perspective and then they create. And I say they, and we're moving back to that again, but I've often said that awareness is like super important. Being aware of what's happening or what goes on in our lives is of the utmost importance. So anyways, one thing that I did want to talk about and I wanted to celebrate, and I realized after when it happened, I was like, oh, and then I realized I do want to celebrate. And so what I'd like to celebrate is my first 3 members of Patreon. I'm so ever grateful that you have joined me in that, and I'm equally and in the fact that one of the Patreon members is a paid member. And actually, a long time ago when I first did the Patreon, I had this idea in my head: what if I got 1 million people to give me $1 a month? Because even a year ago or whenever I created the Patreon, it was considerably more valuable, that dollar, than it is nowadays. Anyways, and I've had that idea since I was a kid of what would I do? How could I contribute? Things that I could change. And since then, I've come up with the ideas of renovating parks and native centers, and I want to create so many different things. The 5-day adventure course. I want to fund essentially seminars and situations like last night I was talking about. Wouldn't it be awesome if a group of like-minded people and read a book called The Untethered Soul on a beach while the sun goes down together as a group and discuss it? That would be just simply amazing if somehow I could create those opportunities. And well, Patreon is definitely one of those ways. And I'm so grateful and thankful to Nicole, Silas, and Samantha for joining. I've come to realize this is about joining. It's about joining up as a group, not necessarily my group. There's a lot of other leaders and facilitators, and some people still call themselves teachers, and even a couple people call themselves gurus. When I think the age of the guru is gone, I think way shower perhaps is a better way of saying it. In the world that we lived in before, there was an awful lot of false light, and what that meant is people were under the illusion and they were being affected by negative aspects of the matrix. The matrix would give people partial truth and then essentially control them. And essentially a lot of the ideas of gurus, I feel, they were somewhat of that. But it wasn't just in active of the guru claiming to be the guru. It was the mentality around the people who joined them, blindly followed everything that they were being told as if there was some sort of perfect formula for enlightenment. When enlightenment is an individual, we're all on the same path. We all, at various different points, have different things that we need to learn and experience, need to go through, and sometimes we're being limited by our choices of being limited times to go through those experiences that we were intending to. Is that our lives are somewhat written for us, in that we have an agreement or we play a role on how our life and what types of lessons we're going to learn and the missions we're going to participate in. And we go off and do it, and yet we still have free will. And that free will is essentially the arrow in the foot, like the minor injury that leads to a larger injury. I forgot what they call it, and that allows for them to manipulate us because we have the free will. So if we're convinced to do something, no matter how damaging it is, we're convinced and we choose to do it by free will, well, then we're the ones who are going to deal with the ramifications and the outcomes of all of that stuff. So thank you so much for my first 3 Patreon members. I do really want to bring it together in such a sense that I could do all of the stuff that I did imagine. However, I've never really pushed too hard on it because I honestly believed that we would have been out of this matrix a long time ago. I mean, not that I knew at that time that we were in the matrix as we are and I've talked about recently, but I mean that this whole thing would have been flowing in an opposite direction, especially after all of the large that Source has done, that the GIA has participated in, that the world has started to really notice things are a lot different than they really want to acknowledge. And when I mean that, I mean that there are still some people who are just not shaking and rolling their eyes and saying, no, that's not the way it is. And it's like, well, what about this piece of evidence? Oh, no, that, I don't honestly bother too much with trying to engage more people than the ones that I interact with daily, meaning that there's a lot of people that are still on a routine. They're still going through that same pattern every day. And the only perhaps difference for some people is the weekend. The weekend comes up and now they're not on that same routine. Now they're on their weekend routine. And that's one of the biggest obstacles or patterns that they lock us on within this prison, is the prison of routine, believing that if I keep doing the same things the same way, that I'm gonna get ahead. When in reality, it's, if the things you're doing aren't working, well, then you have to change them. And there was a phrase or a pattern that went along: if you keep doing the things you're doing, you're getting what you thought. Feel what the ingredients are, or the formula to success. They were told by X number of people, or they saw it in a movie, and they, of course, I definitely creativity and doing things differently. But if things aren't working the way that they are right now, and our leadership in our world is a grand example. All of our lives, leadership of our world hasn't been working. It doesn't matter whether or not the mayor of a city gets elected and then spends a whole bunch of money, throwing a large party for the town, especially, or the city, especially when the state of homelessness and the state of joblessness, all these issues, definitely more advantageous to redirect money to that. But it doesn't matter whether or not they throw these parties, or they kiss the babies at the opportune time, or they have a wonderful past story, that whole idea of seeing the origin story, or seeing where the good guy or bad guy came from, and then kind of drawing on that as a reason why. None of that really matters. What it does matter is that things can be different, and if they aren't in our preferences, then it's about time we start changing. To sitting in coffee shops, and this is not an insult. I hear this all the time. I listen to struggles that our people are while they're talking over there, of pulling each other down. There isn't a lot of pulling each other up in a coffee shop. There's a lot of my problem, and then that person has a problem, and then they share that problem, and then they go to look for a new problem to talk about on their phones and such. And like I said, this is not an insult. This is an observation, and through observation we empower and we embrace our own awareness, and then that allows us to start perhaps looking at ourselves and seeing, well, things out there aren't changing, so how do I make change? Is that we turn inwards, healing. We see where, well, have many things still to work on. And perhaps we're not going to work on them all of this lifetime, like Ram Dass said in one of his amazing speeches. Perhaps I'll work on it next time, but nevertheless, if we want that forward momentum, if we want to see on things on the outside changing, then the first place to start is inward, is on our own healing journey, on our own experiences and how we relate and the people we still hold there that's holding you to that exact moment in time. But when you are able to get to the place, and I'm not saying it's easy, it's definitely not easy to not only examine the world, but also to examine yourself and, face that reality that perhaps many times we hold ourselves accountable means that the situation the next day or the next day, like jump to an apology and admit fault, admit your responsibility, but also it is about having boundaries that you don't go after the other person. See, a lot of times when I was getting in, I don't know, arguments or whatever with my former partner, I would tired of arguing, so I would give up. And often I found a lot of times when I came to discuss and it turned into an argument. So if I came to discuss any issues I had, it would eventually almost always turn into an argument. And then it would be something else was brought up. And then we ended up arguing about that instead of what I was concerned with. And then it ended up being that I felt that I had to apologize because, something else would be brought up. And then by the end of it, I would be defeated by attrition. So wearing me down. And I'm not saying that this is a cognizant or a conscious thing, but I think it's something that often a lot of times people do. When I was reading the Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus book, there was a talk about how women, in the book this was said, that they would bring up things that were a lot older, like things from far back, and men would be like, well, why are you bringing this up? Like, we're talking about this, and now you're bringing up something that happened 3 years ago. And the easiest answer to that is a lot of the times these traumas, sometimes we sweep them under the table and we think, well, I'll just let that be because he's letting or she's letting this be. And yet, if it into a reoccurring pattern, then it's definitely something that needs to be changed in the relationship. In the future, I want to talk about the crumbling of modern relationships because, yeah, that's a fascinating observation I've had over the last few years of watching not only my own relationships deteriorate and fall away, several different ones. I've watched other relationships, my son's friends, families, all of their different relationships and people I know and, relationships, but there's definitely been a change in relationships, which I think, it's one of those things that I was talking about before, how it appears to be a negative, but actually it's a positive. Anyways, I'll leave that talk for later. I'm going to go look for somewhere else to sit that's a little more drier. I'm actually grounding myself right now on a tree trunk or the base of the tree with the back of my bum, and I'm sitting underneath this green, beautiful tree that's keeping most of the rain from me. Yeah, there's lots of wind and rain, and I'm really enjoying it. I love nature, and I really can't wait until we can get out to live in a world that's more in tune with nature. Actually, I was gonna sit near a soccer official ground on it, turf or whatever it's called. I was thinking to myself, all the artificial stuff that's going to disappear one day. The way I understand it is these overlays on the matrix, they had or created a lot of artificial things. And if you think of artificial, think of what's the difference between normal grass and artificial grass or turf. It's that one's organic, the one that grows and God made, and then the other one is inorganic and it's made from twisting chemicals to do what you want them to do, as opposed to just naturally growing. And while it may be convenient, it's still artificial and it's laid over a rather large part of the organic earth, the dirt. And so when I was walking here, I was just challenging it is for the life that lives underneath there. And I'm sure, they've adapted and maybe there's other beings and stuff. And maybe there's a whole mole community that has their city underneath there because they know that no one's going to start digging. So it's all empty or hollow underneath there. You never know. But with the dissolving of the matrix, one of the things that's going to change is that a lot of the artificial or synthetic stuff that's in our world, and this is in almost everything. Like there is so much artificial synthetic materials that's in a lot of our food, our air, our soil, our consumer goods, our cars, our rain, like you just name it. There's our bodies, our lakes, our rivers, all over the world. And it's not just things that we've created, such as these pipes and stuff that, of course, when you're putting in the ground, everything deteriorates after time and breaks away and erodes, and those chemicals are therefore being leaked into the planet. It's also things like that like that artificial soccer field. It's essentially blocking life, or those rubberized or petroleum made, I don't know exactly, but the material they use in playgrounds, it's this rubberized foam and it spreads throughout the entire playground. And like soles of our shoes, it's disconnecting us from Earth. So not only do we have the overlays to deal with and to put a division or a separation in between the heels of our feet and the planet, we also have all these other layers that are part of the 3D reality or the 4D, however we look at it. And so, with that being said, as the matrix dissolves, so do all those artificial things. So do all of those overlays and synthetic stuff. So there's a lot of synthetic crap in the different drugs that we are given. I found out, for example, in our food, a lot of those long words that you can't that you can't pronounce, and they have all these extra sounds on them. Those are actually synthetic creations of something called a terpene. And that's another topic I want to talk about is terpenes, especially for those people who are wanting to heal. I have a large amount of experience in my own personal healing journey that I definitely wish to share with you. So if you've made it this far, I want to encourage you to do something. I want you to subscribe. Like, I don't like asking that because I'm not really interested in building more of a factory on YouTube just to get more people on YouTube. However, I do have both a YouTube and a Rumble channel. I do have a Patreon channel, so there's another way, and I'm showcasing more so my photography on the posts and of Patreon and YouTube. And I don't know about other social media, and yet I definitely do want to create as much art and as much beauty that I can possibly create within the time that we have, so we can start speeding up this exit out of the matrix. And I look at it as more of an emergence into New Earth, a place that's always been here. It's always been on the edges of our perception. And of course, as we change our perception more, as we start seeing things from a different angle and different viewpoint, then we are definitely going to have more an ability to see perhaps what the true reality is. Case in point, there was a story. It's a story because all history seems to be askewed of when Christopher Columbus came to Americas and he talked to the leader of the tribe. The leader of the tribe, a shaman, wasn't able to see the boats that Christopher Columbus had parked off the coast of the water. Christopher could see it, but the shaman couldn't because the shaman had never seen a pirate, like a ship before. A pirate ship, maybe. Yeah, another story for a day. But anyway, massive boats before. So when he looked out into the water, he didn't have an idea. He didn't have a preconception of what a ship looked like. and he wasn't able to see it. However, Christopher Columbus, with his decision or he has seen it, he experienced it. Eventually, he was able to get the shaman to be able to see it. He was able to bring it into the shaman's reality, manifest it there, and then essentially that's how the shaman saw it, is he saw it appear. Us sees without forcing it on anyone, because everyone has their own decision if they're going to wake up, when they wake up, how they wake up. So it's not on any of us to try to get anyone else to perhaps join us. Yet it definitely is advantageous for me, and exactly what I'm doing is to put that out there and let's create something. Let's do something. I know my videos are do nothing, but you know what those do nothing mean. They're all about presence, calmness, stillness, getting into that meditative aspect. I mean, come together and in the change, and the change starts internally within each of us. And when we get through that healing, it's still ongoing for all these years. So if you're just starting, you've been here for a while, or maybe you've been here for, definitely know then that the healing process is ongoing. And you know, it doesn't necessarily have to ever change. However, we can definitely reframe and look at it as opportunities to strengthen our own selves. And the more we heal inside, the more we raise our vibrations, the strong, the more resolved we get to go after the things that we know would be right for us, and we stop taking the choice of the lesser of two evils, because we realize there is always another choice. There's always another choice. That was a underlined statement by the director of the GIA when she explained that having the red and the blue pill, or having choices of he's given by the architect in the end of the choices, when there's always more than two. There's three, there's four, there's however many that you can creatively come across. So one of the techniques a salesperson uses is they essentially give you a limited number of choices, as opposed to there's always a choice just to walk away and say no thank you. I don't want any of that. And that's what me and a lot of other people are doing when it comes to the matrix. No thank you. We don't want that. There's an appreciation and a gratitude for what I receive and the blessings that I have. And I definitely know angels, guides around me who have been helping. And then there's wonderful people like Samantha, Silas, and Nicole who have chosen to, as I invite you to come and join me as well. So thank you so much for sharing your time and attention with me, and I look forward to sharing more of Shone's thoughts. There's the whistle. Have a wonderful day.